All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Headstrong podcast. Today, I'm super excited because my special guest, not only have I known her since I think she was 10 and I was 12, way back in the day, is my good friend and former professional tennis player, Tara Moore. Welcome, Tara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, we are so excited to get to know a little bit more about you and kind of what's been going on with you. So if you could give everybody a little bit of an update of what's been happening and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I met Danielle, obviously, your lovely host here, at Bolliettieri's at IMG Academies, like way back, and it's making us sound really old, so I won't say way anymore. But we practiced together, and we were in the same group, and we grew up together, and Danielle's family sort of like looked after me like I was one of their own kids. So I've always felt really welcome whenever I was around Danielle and her family. And basically now I've kind of moved on from Bolliettieri's, and I've been traveling around the world playing a lot of professional tennis tournaments, and I've just been really doing that. I think it's been crazy, like, to think how many years have gone by since we've been at Bolliettieri's, and how everyone's gone in their separate ways and stuff like that. But it's been a good journey for me anyways.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're crushing it. I want you to kind of tell everybody though, like, what's it been like dealing with like COVID-19 and like the abrupt like stop of playing? Because I know that's got to be crazy. Because for those of you guys listening, like tennis players, they play like 30, 40 weeks a year. They're traveling all over the world, and then to have everything stop, like, what's that been like?
Well, personally, like, obviously I've been playing on the tour for 12 plus years, and just the constant traveling, and we're basically, you know, as you said, we're traveling 25 to 30 weeks a year, and it's been actually quite nice to take sort of a deep breath and spend time with family, and just reflect on how everything's been happening and what we've been doing, really. It's really kind of been nice for me. It's been refreshing to slow down and be at home for a little bit longer, but I definitely ready to get back on the tour, and hopefully it's soon.
I know, right? Like everybody's like missing playing. Yeah. Like the longest break I feel like any tennis player has had, unless there's been like an injury or something. But like to have like an actual break that they make everybody stop and everybody's in the same spot, like this is like the first time I've ever seen anything like this.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're right. It is the longest break that anyone's ever had. That's not been a personal injury. I think as a group, as a collective of tennis players, yeah, this is just never happened ever before.
Yeah, but I want to go way back to before I even knew you. How did you even get into tennis? Like, who introduced it to you? Like, how did it all begin? How did you even get to Bolliettieri?
Well, I was born in Hong Kong, and my mum and family were out in Hong Kong, and basically I was just playing tennis once a week, at like a public park, and I was really lucky because one of the scouts from Bolliettieri came over, and I think I was about 7 at the time, so I hadn't been playing for very long, just maybe a couple of months. And he was like, you know, you really should come over. It'll be really good for you to be in an academy vibe. Obviously I came from a very poor background, and my mum was already spending all of her money on like one lesson a week, so we couldn't afford going to Bolliettieri, but they helped us find like a full sponsor to help me have my school continued in America. You know, my apartment was paid for, everything was paid for, and like obviously it was really great for me to be around an environment where everyone took tennis so seriously.
Oh yeah, like listening, like if you're not familiar with Bolliettieri, that's like the phenom producing place. Like, what was our schedule like? Like we would wake up at like,
oh my God,
go to the court. Like it was just crazy. Like I remember just working so hard.
I just remember like all of us, we had like lessons at like 6 a.m. with Nick in the indoor bubble. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Shirt off, like, hey, like trying to help.
And we'd be all like arriving on our little scooters.
Yeah.
So we'd start at like 6, and then we'd end our day like at Bolliettieri at like 6, 7 o'clock at night. And then, you know, I would go home, and like my mum would be like, okay, let's go for another hour of like feeding and practice. And I'm sure your parents were similar too. So we were all just practicing until like 10 p.m. It was crazy.
It was crazy. Like, you're so right, because after like the structured practice, there was always something else that we had to do. And it was
yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like,
No weekends off too. No weekends off.
no weekend. Yeah, because remember we'd be training during the week, and then the weekend there'd be a tournament, and it was like
Right.
tournament, a week of training, tournament, a week of training. It was like, can it rain, please?
And it would never rain in Bradenton. Like it would be like storming in Sarasota or like Tampa, and we'd all be like, yes, it's gonna storm here, and then like it would literally just like move around Bradenton.
The clouds just move around.
It's crazy.
But honestly, like I really feel like that like discipline and that upbringing was like so helpful, because in anything else that you do in life, you know, obviously you're gonna play tennis for a very, very, very long time, but like whatever you end up doing, that mindset and that discipline like carries over so great, and people are just shocked. They're just shocked by what our life was and what your life still is.
Yeah. I think structure is super important, like whatever you do, regardless if it's like a professional sport or a job, you know, to have structure and like the kind of schedule that we were on, and to be so regimental with it. I think it really helps going forward with anything we want to do and pursue in life, to be honest.
Oh yeah, like we were traveling around the world like before we were 15, 16 years old in these countries. Like I was looking back at some of our photos from Mexico, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Do you remember? So I was talking to my mom about this the other day. Do you remember when my mom didn't get the correct visa to go to Costa Rica, and she got like sent back to the US, and your family basically had to look after me for like 3 weeks we were out there?
That was,
I remember that.
Alex Moreno was there too. And like, yeah, because these are the things, like when it comes to traveling in these countries, you have to have visas, and it's just like, it's crazy. Like at any moment, but we still had to focus. We had to play the tournament. Like,
I mean, we're super lucky. We're from like, you know, the US, so you have like a good passport, and I'm from the UK, and we have a pretty decent passport too. And like, so visas are not as prominent and needed as like some countries, but some of my friends from like Ukraine or Russia or China, the amount of kind of planning and just the scheduling behind where they have to go, what they need to do, they need to have 2 passports so they can send one off all the time. I really respect that, because that is just different.
Oh, that is so true, because can you imagine, like, you're right, like how much planning would go into having to schedule your tournaments, because you know, like, damn, I want to play this tournament in this country, but I have to like go through all this embassy work and passports just to even get there.
Exactly.
That is rough, but it's just crazy just like looking back on everything. And I'm just so excited to hear more about what's been going on lately though. Like, I know you mentioned that there's been some crazy stuff going on with Twitter and people, and talk to us a little bit about that and help us understand, like, what is it like? Okay, this is the question. What is it like being a pro tennis player where there's all these crazy fans or trolls hating on you and wanting you to die, wanting you to lose? And what is that like, and how do you deal with that mentally?
I mean, let's start off with just Twitter in general. Like when you're playing matches and stuff, like there are a lot of people that are really supportive, and they're great, and we love hearing support, and we love being this like interactive with fans and stuff like that. So it's really nice. Obviously, I won't experience the fans scale as much as like the top players will, but it's still really nice to know that there are some people out there watching your results and looking out for you. And so that's really sweet. But then there's another side of it that's just really dark, and it's scary. And I think social media has gotten to a stage where you can just hide behind the keyboard, you can be faceless and say such horrible things to people. I think I don't think they realize how it affects players or sports people or people in general, like reading it. And I think dealing with that stuff, it's been a learning curve, that's for sure. Like there's definitely things that I've had to reevaluate in myself and what I sort of go through online. So that's been the kind of process that I've had to deal with online sort of things. So in general, I think the main thing for me to look at is the positives. Like you have to look at, how are these people being nice to me? How are these people supporting me? And that's you. If you focus on anything else, you're going to be in a lot of pain, that's for sure.
Yeah, because it's really bad. Like I was very lucky. Well, I didn't do as well as I wanted to, so I didn't have crazy people attacking me like that. But it's just like amazing. Like you said, people hide behind the keyboard. They say whatever they want. And like, I think it's because there's a lot of people betting on tennis, or a lot of sport, like a lot of that going on. So like they are pissed when you are losing or that you didn't have the score
or winning
on it, or winning too. Yeah, because you beat the person that you don't.
So you can't win. There's always someone upset.
Yeah, that is crazy. But what else has been going on though? Because I know you mentioned that there is some big thing going on with, okay, based on like when are players coming back? I guess they're giving people the wrong info, or they're only giving certain people. You explain it because I don't even know.
So basically, my whole side of it was I was on the ITF website. So there's two tours. There's the ITF tour and the WTA tour, which are relatively separate on a normal playing time. But at the moment, because of everything's just stopped, everyone's kind of looking at the main tour, which is the WTA tour, for like guidance and help and that kind of direction. So obviously I signed into my ITF page, and it shows like a calendar of tournaments, and there was just maybe the levels of tournaments. I'm trying to explain it so that everyone knows, not just tennis players, but the levels of tournaments for ITF range from 100 Ks, then there's 80 Ks, then there's 60 Ks, and then there's 25s and 15s. So there's a huge range of tournaments that you can play. But the calendar that we saw on the ITF calendar was just full of 25Ks and 15Ks, and there was nothing above a 25K. So the two lowest events had maybe one or two events a week for when we were supposed to return. Like what I've heard rumors that we're supposed to return anyways. So I was really shocked at this, and I was like, how can we all play, and how can we all have equal opportunity when there's only two tournaments a week? You know, there's like 1,000 tennis players out there. How are 1,000 tennis players going to enter two tournaments with, you know, 32 draws? Like only 32 people can get in. So I posted it on Twitter because I do have quite a decent large following on there, and I just thought I'd want to know people's opinions, to be honest. And you know, someone got back to me, a player got back to me who was in a WTA meeting the last couple of weeks, which I didn't even know were happening. I had no idea that they had these meetings every week, because I'd love to be in them. I'd love to be included. And she basically just said, well, this is the schedule that we got. And yeah, and as you know, like only 20%, I would say maybe even less, I'm being generous here, but only 20% of players are privy to these WTA calls. So being on the outside and not knowing what's happening, especially with something as important as the resumption of our tours, knowing that 20% of players have kind of an upper hand, you know, they kind of know where the tournaments are. They'll know what the surface is of these tournaments, so they can better prepare before the start of the tournament. Let's say like all the tournaments ended up being on clay, and we were all hitting on hard, and then we come back and we're like 3 weeks before the tournament starts, they're like, hey, all the tournaments are on clay, and we're like, well, wait, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, I felt a duty to players outside, because I was so shocked. I felt a duty to other players to just post it and show the rest of the players, like, hey, heads up, this could happen. It's not for sure, but if this happens, like, be ready. These are the tournaments that are out. Like, we're, you know, the ITF schedule is on there. And I think my end, like the mistake that I made, I didn't cut out the WTA tour portion of it, because I think that's what everyone was freaking out about. Which I understand, you know, I can't say that I did everything perfect and like down to protocol, but at the same time, I think I was reacting just from the information that I got, and I was so surprised. So I decided to kind of clear everything up and write a letter to the WTA and the ITF, because the ITF have been extremely poor with communication. And this, yeah. And in these times, you know that people just want information. Like if you're at a job, if your workplace of employment, you know, send out a weekly newsletter just informing you, hey, this is what hopefully can happen when we come back, you know, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's a lot happier. But this isn't what's happening right now. They're sending out like random messages to players. And if you do email them back and ask questions, they have no one to answer the questions at the moment, because obviously they furloughed all of their staff. Which I understand. Yeah. So I understand to a point, yes, you furloughed your staff, but there needs to be at least one person or two people answering emails and answering questions of players, because if there's no tennis players, there's no tennis tour. And if we're not happy, like who else are you trying to keep happy? You know what I mean? So I wrote a letter, and it's been pretty well received by the majority, I would say. And I definitely took time out to speak to a lot of the lower ranked players. You know, I spoke to 30 plus players, and they all gave me little inputs to add into the letter. And I just tried to convey their message as well as possible, because players are so scared of speaking out. It's something that I've seen my whole entire career on the tour. Players are so scared of what would happen if I say something wrong. And I've been playing for so long now that I'm just kind of like, you know what? With everything going on, all we deserve is information. I'm not asking for extra information. I'm not asking for things that are like illegal or anything like that. All I'm asking for is information that 20% of players are getting. So I think that was the kind of message that I really wanted to push. And I think a lot of the top ranked players have become quite upset with me for posting a schedule, which I can understand if that, you know, that's how they want to feel. But at the same time, what I don't understand is how they don't understand that if 20% of players are getting something and the 80 other percent are not getting anything, that's like a step up. That's like a like extra help for them. So, you know, everything's so, you know, equality is so important. It's been something spoken about all around the world. And I think with like, again, not to compare it to anything that's happening in the United States, I don't want to confuse it with that. But the main thing that I've learned from this is, because obviously I can't understand, because it's never happened to me. I'm not in this situation, and you know, but I want to learn and I want to educate myself better. But at the same time, like, the one thing it has taught me is to speak up. And if I feel like we're being mistreated or not given enough information, I want to convey that. I want to speak up, because if I don't speak up, no one will. And I think that's the kind of message that I'm trying to push forward.
No, I think that it's awesome that you had the courage and you were thinking it not only of yourself, but everybody, because there were so many people, like you said, didn't feel comfortable speaking up because they were unsure of what may happen or how they may look. But at the end of the day, like, you're getting people more information, and that's what everybody's wanting. And I can't imagine like not knowing what the future holds for me in my career, based off of like them not giving you any kind of like updates that at least should be like monthly or bi-weekly or something, saying,
right.
Hey, you know, we're here, we still, you know, we care about you, stay tuned, like something, you know, like
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, literally. Like, all I would ask is, obviously, like, they can't inform you on everything. Like, I get that. Like, there's a lot of things that are changing. There's a lot of moving components behind, but they can at least say, hey, we are trying, we're still working for you. Because I can't just assume that they're working their hardest if they're not telling me anything for my job, for my livelihood, for something that's that important to me. So I just want to give them a nudge and say, hey, look, players are still interested. Players do want this information, and we are here and we are listening. So that's the kind of message that I was trying to say.
No, I think that
but it's been crazy.
Yeah. I think that we should talk about for a couple minutes just like some of the biggest misconceptions about tennis and being a pro tennis player, because I'll say one, people think that like tennis is like a team sport where there's all this guaranteed money and there's contracts, and it's like, let's talk about that for a little bit, because I think a lot of people don't understand what it's truly like to be like an independent contractor, in the sense of, hey, if I'm playing and I'm winning, I'm making money. If I'm losing, I'm making some money, but as long as I have my sponsors. But other than that, it's like, that's it, you know? So let's dive into that a little bit, because it's a big misconception.
Yeah. So the main misconception that I always have with speaking to people who aren't involved with tennis is the amount of money you get in a tournament. So let's take a $15,000 tournament, for example, like the lowest tier of prize money tournaments you get, like on the women's side and the men's side. That means, it doesn't mean that if you win, you get $15,000, because that's a good pot of money. That'd be great. But that's not what it means. It means that $15,000 is shared between the winner, the semifinalists, the first rounds, the qualifyings, the double. So I'm just trying to give you a bit of perspective. If you win a 15,000, you're earning maximum $1,500 before tax.
Before tax. And then depending on the country.
Before tax.
That's
right.
It pulls out real quick.
Right. So you're looking at 1,500 minus $300 on top of that. So yeah, and you know, if you lose first round of main draw, you're earning $150, which, if you think about it, with all the preparation that we put in, you know, the flights that we have to go through, the hotel that we have to pay for, the training that we need to put in, the physios that we need to get when we're training, just stuff like that, like that you don't think about. Just $150 cannot even cover a day of work.
No.
Not even if you take out your coach, your physio, all the training. Just let's say you get to the tournament, your first day, the hotel is normally more than $150. So it's a different world out there for the lower ranked players, and there are a lot of stats out there that I'm working on this sort of a tennis collective that's trying to help inform players on just what's going on their tour, and how prize money is distributed, and how we can help, you know, have our voices heard and stuff like that. And there are a lot of stats that I've been looking through for this to help players, and some of them are crazy. So it's like some of the stats for prize money distribution is like players from 500 to 700 of the world are getting 0.01% of the prize money distributed all around the world. That's like nothing. That's scary.
That
you know, like
it is so tough to like break into the pro tournaments. You have to, I think they've changed it a bit since I stopped, but it used to be so tough just to even get in. You have to play all these qualifying rounds to get one shot to play a match where you may win, and then maybe you'll get a point. And then once you get a point, then it's like, okay, now I can get into another tournament and try to, it's basically like the chances are just crazy. It's all the luck of the draw. It's all like, there's just so much into it. So when you are in there, and just kind of based off what Tara is saying, like, there's not a lot of money into it until you start getting sponsors, until you start really working your way up. Because once you're in the WTA land, it's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little nicer. You get your hotels paid for by the WTA. You get, like, you know, treatment better. You get better treatment. You get like nicer places that you're going to. And yeah, the WTA is something that everyone's striving to. I think that obviously it is important to keep it kind of separate so that people that playing the lower events do want to get up, right? But at the same time, I don't know, the only like sport which is kind of similar to tennis is golf, because it's a singular sport. So the only way I can compare it is if you look at the PGA Tour, someone 750 in the world is still earning around $60,000 a year, right? Which tennis players are not. Like, I think the majority of tennis players, if you're 750 in the world, men or women, especially women, but men as well, you're earning around 18, 19K. I think not even. I'm being generous as well. So although the golf tour, it's obviously not perfect as well, there is still a much greater share of the prize money than there is in tennis. With tennis, like if you play a Grand Slam, for example, the amount of revenue that they generate, there's only something like 14% or 18% of revenue is given back and put into the prize money pot for the players. The rest of it, so think about it, like all of that money, there's only 18% of revenue going back into the prize money, and that's all that the players get. The rest of the money is going back into the federations and all that stuff. And I get it, they need money too, they need to work, but at the same time, it's the lowest of any sport. But it's crazy.
I never thought of it like that. That is a really good way to look at it, because, you know, I'm always just looking at, you know, when Serena's holding up a trophy and they're like, your check is 3 million or 2 million. I'm like, whoa. And to think that the tournament over the course of that 2 weeks made like 200 million or something crazy like that, you know, and it's not going back into all the players who are on this tour grinding, you know, that's not cool.
Right. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, like the one thing that I've been really trying to push for is, yes, not everyone can make money. Not everyone can be considered a professional player. And I think the trolls on Twitter have definitely made that very clear to me. But I think the one thing that I'm trying to push is that if you're 500 in the world at your sport, okay, you're top 500 in your profession, you should at least be able to feed yourself without outside help. Like that, I can't stress that enough. Like, I think any profession in the world, we've been working, Danielle, you know as well, we've been training, working our whole entire lives. Like, it's not simple, it's not easy. Like, it is basically like we're working already from a young age. We're training all day, we're out in the heat, we're running around, like we're pushing our bodies, we're getting injured. I mean, you right, with injuries and stuff like that, you know, like a 15, 16-year-old girl shouldn't have tendonitis in their knees or elbows or anything like that. And it's something that I don't think people that aren't involved in tennis see. They don't see the behind the scenes that much. They don't see how hard like players are actually working to get to 500 in the world even.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm pushing for. I'm not pushing for, you know, 500 in the world to make millions and millions of dollars, because that's never going to happen. But just at least to be able to pay your mortgage and you know, put food on the table, because that's not happening right now. So yeah, it's scary.
That is really, really scary. Just wanted to ask you this. What would, we won't say your age, we'll just say that you're in your 20s. What would 20-year-old Tara tell 14-year-old Tara if you could go back and do anything a little different?
I think for myself, one of the main things that I would have pushed myself to do more is go to college instead of starting on the tour straight away. I think you were really smart and you went down the college route, and that opened up a lot of doors for you, and you were still able to come back to professional tennis afterwards if you chose to. I think when I was younger, when I was 18, I was at a level where I was doing really well, and
good, though.
I had a lot of, yeah, but I had a lot of sponsors at the time, and I had a lot of just a lot of push behind me saying, hey, you've got to go pro. There's only a certain amount of years on the tour. But now, obviously, I know that players can play until, you know, late 30s. So if I knew that back then, I always thought there was an expiry date on tennis players. Like, once you hit 30, like, you're done, you know?
Like, because back then, like, remember, like, people like Anastasia Miskina and, like, those players from that era, like, they were retiring at, like, I think it's because they, like,
25.
Like, okay, I'm out now. Like, they were done at like 25, 24, and I was like, whoa. So when I got older, I was like, wow, like Serena, Venus, they're still playing. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. It's impressive, because, like, you know, the amount of stress that you're putting your body through for someone like Serena, someone like Venus, someone like Roger, Rafa, to put their body through that every single day still, and be like elite, like be the like top level that they are. I think that's, to me, that I'm like, wow, like props to you, seriously, because even now, like, I'm a little bit younger than them, and I'm like, my body, I've had shoulder surgery, I've had, like, recently, and I've had like a lot of problems with my arm and legs and stuff like that. I've, you know, dislocated my ankle. So yeah, it's crazy. I think, but that's definitely the one thing that I would probably go back and tell myself, that there is time, and you know, you don't need to push yourself into a world that you're maybe not comfortable getting into at the moment. You know, take a step back, focus on your education, because I was looking into that route, but I think I was so scared of missing out of my prime years, if that's what you can call it. So I was like, no, I have to go pro. So that was kind of where I think I could have changed and done better.
Wow, that's so good to know, because I just remember when I went to school, I was so like, oh, like I failed, like literally like the reverse, because I was working with Nicole Vita Silva's stepdad. Like, I was finally starting to do good. I was at the 500 level pro when I decided to go to college, and I was like, but you know,
it's the right decision.
I don't know. I'll debate you on that one, just because college messed me up.
Oh, really?
Messed me up from an injury standpoint. Like,
they do push you really hard.
Well, here's the deal with the college tennis, which you may or may not know. Like, they don't have, from a physio standpoint, people who are specialized in tennis. So I was at University of Miami. I don't want to hate on them, but basically, like, their whole staff was great, but they were football staff. So they were having us do football related exercises and things. And hey, they're having us do football related exercises and things. And that messed my knees up. Like, I was very lucky, Tara. Like, I remember, like, back in the day, like, I never had any like major injuries, but I didn't start having them until I went to college, and my body never like fully got right again. So I'm like, oh, college ruined me, but I'm still love, having it or whatever, but I will say, like, it's not necessary. I feel like the life skills that you learn from tennis and everything, like, that's really been what's catapulted me. I don't think it was more so college, but hey, it's good to kind of have perspective from both ends.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Amina, like who you just saw there on the screen, she went to college. She did the college route as well, and she had a good experience at college. She said that she was probably too immature to go pro.
Yeah.
You played her?
No, I didn't play her, but she went to Michigan, right?
Right. Yeah.
The lucky thing about they had good tennis specific people, which is that changes a lot, like depending on school and who you have your coaching and everything. So that's good perspective though to think about. But one thing that I would tell my 14-year-old self is quality over quantity. I feel like tennis players are all about, like, you need to be training for 7 hours a day and you need to be bleeding and crying and, kill yourself. And it's like, yo, like, what are we doing here? Like, we were ourselves.
I know.
And it's like, now that I look back, I'm like, no, I can like really work as hard as I possibly can for 2 hours, but not for like 7-8 hours. Like, I think we were killing our bodies at a young age.
Yeah. There's one side of me that does say that. Like, I'm like, oh, did I push myself too hard when I was younger? Like, we were playing like 8-9 hours of tennis a day. Like, and that's not even an exaggeration. We were genuinely playing 8 hours of tennis a day. So was it too much? But then on another side, I was saying, like, okay, if we didn't push ourselves that much, would we have been good enough to play? And that was the kind of, and it was always that fear as well. Like, I would see you training another like hour and I'd be like, I need to train another hour. I'd see like our other friends training other hours and we'd be like, well, if they're training, we need to be training. And it's sad because we should all be supporting each other to a certain extent. Yes, we are competitors on the tour and we should be, competitive as possible on the match court. But once we come out of the match court, we should all be like supporting each other. We're all women, we're all strong women, and we're all like working and striving for the same thing. So I think the support like from the tennis tour between players is one thing that I think could improve a little bit as well.
Compared to the men's side of things, like the women's side is weird, like, yeah, we're cordial, we travel around the world together, but I want to kill you because you're in between me and my money.
Right.
Like, yo, like, if you take a different approach here, like,
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I do understand it. And, my kind of experience with the WTA tour, it is a different atmosphere. You walk into the room and you definitely are made to feel like you're the new outsider. Like, what are you doing here? You're stepping on my territory. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's like how they want, like, it's like a boxing kind of atmosphere, rather than it being like a friendly environment. But I get it. I mean, there's no disrespect here. It's just the way that it is. So yeah.
I definitely feel like we were very lucky in the group. Like, guys won't know this, but Percy's group was like the group that we were all in. Like, everybody that the academy considered to be somebody that was going to do something in tennis was like, that was a girl that was in this group. We were all like pushing each other and training together, and everybody was young, and it was a really cool environment to grow up in.
I mean,
after that, I feel like I've never been in anything like that or talked to anybody who experienced something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that group was really special. I think there was like 8 or 9 girls in the group. And I think 3 of them turned pro. 3 of them reached like top 200. And the other 5 or 6 all went to, Division I colleges. I think that's a crazy stat, like out of, 8-9 people for everyone to have, gone through. Pardon?
Some people in the group did better than 200. It wasn't me, but like,
yeah, a couple people.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, for sure. So I think like it's incredible. I think it's crazy that like everyone basically achieved their goals to some extent. I think obviously everyone's goal was to be like world number 1 at the time, and we all like believed it. And that was credit to Bolliettieri and Percy and all the coaching staff there. Right. We all were like, yeah, we're going to be number 1 in the world. Like that was our goal, So I think
like literally remember those Grand Prix tournaments?
Oh my God, yes.
Bolliettieri is this like massive sports academy in Bradenton, Florida, where everybody there, I mean, is trying to achieve their goal of being professional. And then like the second is to go to college, but like the goal is to be professional. And then in our group, every week they would have a tournament if there wasn't another tournament happening, we would have like an internal tournament within the academy, because like we never had a break. So I just remember these tournaments being like, gosh, we have to win the Grand Prix, and like it was just like.
Do you remember the boards that they used to put up? It was savage. Like Percy would get the names and he would be like moving them down and stuff, like if you lost, and we were all like, oh my god, like every week we were so scared. Yeah, because if you were like last in the group, you had like a chance of moving down groups. Do you remember that?
Oh. Like we're bringing back anxiety, because
brutal.
The things when you're like a 14, 13-year-old kid, you're like, no, I don't want to move down. Like, I need to stay here. This is where I'm validated. Like, that was our life. So it's just really cool to see like where everybody ended up. Like, it's so weird. Like, it's just really cool actually to see like what's going on with everyone. And yeah.
Do you keep in contact with a lot of the girls?
Probably with Nicole Bartnick the most, and that's probably the most out of everybody. Like everybody, obviously with Facebook, you see what people are doing. Like people are getting married, people are having babies, people are like growing up, which is kind of cool. I gotta do a better job of like really trying to connect and be in touch with everyone, because it was a really, we should like do like a
have like a reunion.
Yeah, a reunion or something. Yeah. Everybody come back to IMG, because IMG is so different now.
It's different. Wow, it's huge now. I mean, I went back like 4 years ago, and I mean, I bet it's changed even more since then, but it was nuts. Like the size of it.
It's like Disney World for sports. Like it literally ran around, and like we all need to just go back just for a day just to like look at everything and see, because it's a completely different world. But it's cool that we got to like come out of that. And
yeah, I don't think many people can say, I think now, especially with how big it is as well, I don't think the intimacy is the same as it was before. I think when it was just like a tennis, like there were other sports around it, but it was mainly tennis. Like I think it was so much smaller. It was like, I mean, we already thought it was so big as well. Like, you know, there's like 10 people in a group, but like we already, like now looking back on it, it's like so intimate. So I think it's really cool to look back and remember and reflect on all those things that we did.
Yeah. So let's kind of see, what's next for you, Tara? Like, how can people connect with you? How can they follow you? How can they keep up with what you're doing? And what's next based off of what you know?
You know, I'm pretty active on social media. I think it's one of the things that I've always tried to be, because I want people to have like an inside view of what it is to maybe not necessarily be a top player, but someone who's traveling week in, week out for tennis. And I think I'm trying my best to give that angle as much as possible. I'm looking into new ventures to better pursue that and push that. But you know, for me and all the tennis players around the world, it's just a waiting game at the moment. We're all waiting for it to be safe to travel. You know, we don't want to be part of the problem. I think at the end of the day, yes, we are all young and healthy and fit, and you know, coronavirus, COVID-19 probably won't affect us that badly. I'm saying it could, but it's more the responsibility of trying to keep it out of our homes, out of our family, our older members of our family, you know, friends and stuff like that. And I think that that's something that we really all are very, very, very aware of. And traveling is one of the things that is the biggest spreader of disease. And I think that that's why we're all very wary of coming back right now.
Yes. So tell everybody where they can follow you and how they can connect with you.
Okay, I'm going to plug myself here. No, so my Instagram and Twitter handles are pretty much the same. It's Tara Moore 92, and it's really simple. And yeah, I try and post as much as I possibly can. I'm pretty vocal with sort of trying to help changes on the tour, and I know I can rub people up the wrong way because I'm very opinionated, but I just try to speak my truth as much as possible.
No, we appreciate you coming on the Headstrong podcast and kind of sharing your perspective and your insight, because it's just greatly appreciated, because tennis is like such a cool sport, but so many people are not aware of like everything that comes along with it. They just see the TV and Serena and they're like, wow, but they don't see everything else that makes a tennis player. And we really appreciate your perspective, your insight, and your mindset, because you know, I always respected you always when I was growing up. Like you worked so hard, like you pushed me like crazy. And my parents were always like, you got to work harder. Look at Tara.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, like, obviously, like, well done to you too. Like you've really, I remember your positive attitude when we were younger, and it was always something that everyone would always comment on. Oh, Danielle's always so like positive, and she's always looking at the brighter side of things. And I think that it's really good that you're spreading that and sharing your insight and how to better yourself mentally, because I think that that's so important. Like not just for sports, but for business people in general, to be happy and healthy, like have a healthy mind. It's just so underrated. I think that's really cool. So thank you to you.
Thanks, Tara. Oh my gosh. Well, first here on the Headstrong podcast. Thank you, Tara, again for coming on, and we will definitely be in touch better now that we've connected again.
For sure.
All right.
Thanks, Danielle.